Welcome to another video on lifestyle medicine and health coaching. And today we're going to talk about habit formation and change. And over the past 6 years working as a health coach, I have noticed a pattern that shows up again and again. Some people are able to sustain meaningful change in their health, their habits, their lifestyle, but others struggle even when they are highly motivated and even when they know exactly what to do. And that has led me to a question I often reflect on. What actually determines whether change holds or falls apart? Because it's rarely knowledge or access to information, and it's rarely intention. It's something else. And one of the most overlooked reasons is something called behavior resistance. And this is something I wanted to talk about today. And I hope you will find it useful as well. So let's start with what change actually is. Because one of the most important things to understand is this: your brain is primarily not wired for transformation. It is wired for survival, efficiency, familiarity, prefers predictability. So even when we consciously want change, whether it's better health, new habits, identity change, a different lifestyle, another part of us is always evaluating. Is this safe? Is this efficient right now? Is this familiar? And this is where something interesting happens. Behavior is not only shaped by our motivation, it is shaped by conditions. So, this is something we clearly see in behavioral science. We also use behavioral science and psychology in coaching. For example, BJ Fogg describes behavior as a combination of motivation, ability, and prompts. And when ability drops, when we are tired, when we feel stressed, when we are overwhelmed, behavior becomes much harder to sustain, even if your motivation is high. James Clear also talks about it when he says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." And that really is the key point here, because systems are what we rely on when motivation is no longer available. So let's talk about behavior resistance, or what can also be called limbic friction. In neuroscience, limbic friction is the natural resistance we experience when the brain perceives effort, discomfort, or disruption from what feels familiar or safe. And this friction becomes most visible not when life is easy, but when life is not. When we are tired, when we are traveling, when we are emotionally overwhelmed, when routines are disrupted, when we are under stress, or simply not feeling well. In those moments, even simple habits can start to feel harder. And this is where most people unintentionally misunderstood change, because most people design their habits for their best days. They build routines for when they feel motivated, when their energy levels are strong, when they feel rested, they are in control, they have the structure. But real life is not made of best days. We all know that. Real life is made of disrupted days. And so the real question becomes not, can I do it when I feel good? But instead, what happens when I don't? And this is the part that is very often missing in health, in lifestyle, in coaching, behavioral change. We prepare for starting change, but we rarely prepare for maintaining change under pressure. And this is where I often see people unintentionally fall into an all or nothing pattern. When life is going well, everything works. But when life becomes hard, stressful, unpredictable, the entire system collapses. Not because the person failed, but because the system was never designed for variability that we experience in our lives. And this is where limbic friction really matters, because it's not something we can eliminate. We all experience it. Whenever you implement something new or you introduce a new structure or a new practice, you're always going to be experiencing that. But you can prepare for it and you can work with it rather than giving up the first time you feel there's a little bit of resistance happening. Okay. So, in my coaching practice, one of the most effective tools I use is helping clients design what I call scenario-based non-negotiables. And this is a way of building change that adapts to real life and not ideal life. We don't just create one version of a routine, whatever that routine is, we create a number of versions. So, for example, a standard version for normal life when your energy levels are stable and your routines are in place. And then another version, maybe a low energy version for days when you feel tired or stressed, mentally overloaded. And then we create another one for a disrupted version, for a disrupted scenario when, for instance, you're traveling, visiting you, or you have visitors, you are in emotional stress, or you're going through different life transitions. And in each version, we define something very important, which is what are the absolute non-negotiables. It's not about perfection. It is about minimum actions that you can keep the system alive. For example, on the days when your energy levels are lower, or maybe you're not feeling very well, you just prioritize one nourishing meal per day, or you just focus on hydration if that's all you can do that day. Or it could be also exercise wise, maybe just a short walk rather than, a full workout. Um, or a few minutes of nervous system regulation rather than the entire, practice or a number of techniques. And what this does is something very powerful. It removes that all or nothing response because instead of thinking, I can't do everything, so I will do nothing, we shift into what is still possible for me today. And behavioral science actually supports that and talks about how people over rely on motivation spikes or fresh starts, but real change comes from the systems that work on ordinary days, not just on the motivated ones. We also know that our state determines our behavior far more than intention alone. So, when our internal state shifts, when stress increases, when energy drops, behavior naturally shifts with it as well, which is why designing for different states is so important. So, when we talk about sustainable change, we are not talking about perfection and we are not talking about doing everything right all the time. We're also not talking about discipline alone. We are talking about building systems that can hold you, even when life doesn't feel perfect. Because in reality, the success of change is not defined by your best days, it is defined by your hardest ones. And this is something I now include in all of my coaching sessions, helping people bridge the gap between intention and real life implementation. Because change is not just about starting, it is about sustaining across all the different seasons of life. So if you're currently going through a health change, lifestyle change, life transitions, whether this is related to stress, to menopause, illness recovery, burnout, or simply wanting to feel better in your mind and body, and if you feel that you understand what to do but struggle to maintain it consistently, or if you notice that you never achieve your goals, and you may have the same goals for your health and well-being as you did 10 years ago. I offer a free 15-minute consultation call to explore whether working together may support you. So I encourage you to book your call if this resonates with you, and I will include the link underneath my video. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Much love.